Why did a single cloth patch threaten them so much? That was the question haunting her as the morning sun spilled across Fort Benning, crisp and cold, breathing life into another day of quiet competition and loud egos. Steel rang in the distance where soldiers trained. Gravel shifted beneath boots. Radios crackled. Men who never failed at anything walked with the confidence of people who assumed they belonged. And then there was her. Lieutenant Sarah Reeves stood so still she felt the pulse in her teeth, heartbeat steady, breath measured, uniform perfect. Everything about her screamed discipline, control, readiness. Everything except that one patch. A worn, faded badger sewn into her shoulder like a tiny act of rebellion. The thread was ghost white now, the edges soft with time. It didn't match the sharp, clean insignia of the elite 75th Ranger Regiment around her. It didn't belong here. According to most, neither did she. Someone coughed behind her, a forced, mocking sound. Then a whisper, not even disguised. "Cute, my kid has the same patch on his lunch bag." Laughter followed, soft, careless, like flicking ash off a cigarette. The kind meant to remind her she was already on trial every second she stood here breathing the same air. She didn't turn because she wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Stillness was armor. Silence was battlefield trench. Sometimes dignity wasn't loud, it just refused to break. Her jaw tightened anyway. 6 weeks, 300 candidates reduced to 30. She had outshot, outplanned, outbled most of them. But the hardest part wasn't the marches or the cold or the sand cutting her face raw during low crawls. It was this. The constant performance. The unspoken dare, prove you belong, every minute, every breath. Did they doubt her because she was a woman, or because she wore the one thing they couldn't categorize? Probably both. Soldiers feared what they couldn't understand. A voice cut across the formation. "Lieutenant Reeves." Colonel Tangsdell's tone was clipped and precise, powerful in a way only women who had conquered rooms full of men could master. Sarah's spine somehow straightened more. "At ease." The group broke. Boots loosened, shoulders dropped, laughter resumed like static on a bad radio channel. But the colonel walked toward her with purpose, eyes sharp as frost under morning light. "Walk with me." Sarah followed. The world dimmed slightly, or maybe her chest tightened enough to make the air feel heavy. They crossed manicured grass, dew still clinging like stars caught in daylight. "That patch," the colonel began. Even the way she said it carried weight, like she wasn't talking about cloth but a secret. "It's becoming a distraction." Sarah didn't respond, not immediately, discipline first, emotions second. "I can't remove it, ma'am." Sentimental attachment. Legacy. That earned the faintest movement at the corner of the colonel's mouth. Not a smile, not quite approval, more like recognition. A soldier's way of saying, "I understand more than I'll ever say aloud." "Everything about you is under scrutiny twice over," she said quietly. "That's the reality. You know it, I know it, I lived it." A pause. "Your actions must speak so loudly that nothing else matters." "Yes, ma'am." "And yet," Tangsdell's gaze drifted to the patch again, "you hold on to that." Sarah's voice softened, almost swallowed by memory. "My grandfather gave it to me before he died, told me to wear it proud, said, when the time comes it will speak for itself." The colonel studied her, not judging, just measuring. Soldiers did that more than they breathed. "I won't order you to remove it," she said finally. "Just don't let tradition blind you to survival." Tradition, survival. Sometimes they were the same. "Understood, ma'am." The colonel walked away, leaving silence behind her. Silence always followed women who earned power honestly, sharp, clean, slightly dangerous. Sarah exhaled slowly, controlled, contained, but deep inside a flicker of something raw moved. Pride, grief, maybe just stubbornness. She wasn't sure anymore. The patch meant something. something buried in time and secrecy, and the steady heartbeat of a dying man who had whispered, "Wear it, when the moment comes, you'll know." She didn't know yet, but she trusted him. Later, when the teams assembled for the final phase briefing, she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who survived long before she earned rank. 5-man teams, mock hostage rescue, last test before selection. Except it never felt mock. Everything here was real: fear, judgment, the weight of legacy. Her teammates checked weapons and gear, magazines clicking in, gloves tightening, helmets adjusted. Davidson stood too close, movements loud, breathing louder, ego loudest of all. He leaned toward another operator, voice pitched for her to hear. "Bet she thinks that little cartoon animal makes her special." Sarah ignored him. She'd learned early, predators hunted reactions, not weakness, and there was a difference. She checked her M4, custom grip, lighter stock, optics perfectly zeroed. Her fingers brushed the small badger etched into the metal near the trigger. Tradition meeting steel, past meeting present. Team leaders, an instructor called. "Report for briefing." Davidson stepped forward, smirk confident enough to sign paperwork. The instructor didn't even look at him. "Lieutenant Reeves, you're late." Silence broke around her like glass. Davidson froze, expression stiffening into disbelief. Miller turned, eyebrows raised, then smoothed his face into neutrality. Soldiers were trained not to show shock, but some news punched through reflexes. Sarah didn't celebrate, didn't smirk, didn't look at anyone. She simply moved, footsteps steady, rifle balanced against her chest, pulse betraying none of the electricity coursing through her veins. Inside the briefing tent, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like restless thoughts. A map covered the table: mountainous terrain, perimeter lines, routes marked in red. General Arthur Hayes stood by it, a relic of old wars and new secrets, face carved by battles both fought and avoided. His eyes lifted when she entered, sharp, assessing, familiar with disappointment and risk. He saw the patch immediately. Most noticed it, few reacted. But his breath paused, barely but enough. "Lieutenant Reeves," he said, "step closer." She did. The air felt heavier, like crossing into a room where truth waited with knives hidden behind its back. "Where did you get that patch?" "My grandfather, sir." "Your grandfather served in." "I know exactly where he served." The room seemed to shrink, sound thinning like air near mountain peaks. "What do you know about Task Force Relentless?" She blinked. "Nothing, sir." His jaw tightened. A memory flickered behind his eyes, pain or guilt or legacy. Sometimes they looked the same. "He never told you." "No, sir." Silence stretched, not awkward, historic. Then quietly, like handing her a weapon she wasn't sure how to hold. "This mission just changed. You will receive real-time objectives. Follow them without hesitation." His gaze dropped to the patch. "That symbolizes more than you understand." "What does it mean, sir?" Another pause. "When the time comes, it will speak." The same words her grandfather had whispered. The air chilled. Her pulse rose. Something unseen shifted, like the world adjusting around a secret finally noticed. She saluted, turned, stepped out of the tent, one heartbeat slower than usual. Enough for uncertainty to seep in, enough for curiosity to bloom like fire. Outside, clouds gathered, dark, heavy, urgent. Boots moved around her, gear loaded, rotors already warming on the airfield. Her team waited. Davidson glared. Miller studied her. The others simply prepared. No one knew what she carried. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she did. Legacy wasn't always loud. Sometimes it whispered in dying breaths, an old thread, and the weight of names no one spoke anymore. The helicopter roared to life. Doors open, wind cutting across the tarmac like a warning. Soldiers climbed aboard one by one. Sarah paused at the edge, hand on metal, boots firm, heart steady. She didn't know what was coming, but she knew this. Some missions didn't start when briefing began. They started decades before, in promises made to men who survived the kind of wars nobody wrote books about. She stepped in, and somewhere deep inside a memory older than she was, the badger seemed to stir. When the time comes, that time was moving toward her like thunder on the horizon. How many moments in life came with warning? Real warning, not instinct, not a tightening in the gut, not a whisper of doubt that could be ignored. This one did. A vibration through metal, a shift in air pressure, a pilot's voice too calm for the storm outside. Approaching drop zone in 8. The helicopter thudded through the low clouds, night hugging every inch of metal. Rain streaked sideways across the open doors, wind whipping through like cold fingers searching for weakness. Headsets hummed with static and suppressed nerves. Sarah sat at the edge, boots locked to the floor plate, rifle braced against her chest. She stared into the dark, not seeing yet, only knowing. Sometimes seeing wasn't with eyes. Sometimes it was what lived beneath skin, coiled tight like a heartbeat before the first shot of a firefight. This didn't feel like training. Not anymore. And it wasn't just the general's cryptic warning. It wasn't even the patch, now burning on her shoulder like someone had sewn a live ember into her uniform. It was the silence. The wrong kind. No banter, no nervous jokes, no last-second bravado from men who feared vulnerability more than death. Just breathing, mechanical hum, and the invisible truth. Something was waiting. 6 out, the pilot called. She checked her gear again, though she didn't need to. Habit, ritual, the little motions humans did to feel in control when they weren't. Davidson sat across from her, helmet tilted slightly forward, jaw clenched, not looking at her, not speaking. Anger, resentment, fear. In men like him, all three blended into a single expression, quiet, hungry challenge. He wanted to lead. He wanted to prove she didn't deserve this seat. He would have sold certainty for respect. The kind of man who fought harder against women than enemies. But there was something else in his stare tonight, the smallest fracture of doubt. As if even he sensed there was a current running beneath this mission, something bigger than pride or competition. 3 out. Sarah looked down. Dark mountains rose like jagged ribs from the earth, clouds swallowing their peaks. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the valley for a heartbeat, enough to see dense trees, winding river, no lights, no civilization. Except there, a faint flicker of heat signature on the horizon, barely visible through NVGs. Movement. Human, not nature. Too organized to be lost hikers. Too still to be relaxed. They were waiting. 2. A sudden hiss of static, then a curse from the cockpit. What's that? Tracer fire tore up from the trees like angry comets, red streaks ripping sky. Contact taking fire. The helicopter lurched violently, metal screaming, alarms barking inside headsets. Sarah grabbed the strap overhead, body slamming sideways as the world became chaos. Bullets punched through the fuselage, loud, violent, cracking like bones snapping under boots. Flare, flare. No goods, lock on. A flash, blinding white explosion off starboard. Anti-air rocket, close enough to feel the heat kiss her cheek through the open door. Men shouted. Someone prayed. The pilot fought the controls like a man wrestling a demon. We're going down, brace. Training took over, mind silent, body moving, strap tight, head down, soul braced. Impact came like the world trying to shake them loose. Metal crunched, earth ripped up beneath skids, rotor blades shattered into screaming fragments. Pain hammered through her shoulder, air fled her lungs in a violent rush. Then stillness. Smoke. Burnt fuel. Heartbeat pounding like it wanted out. She blinked, vision swimming. One breath. One test of limbs. Alive. Boots scraped, groans, someone coughing blood. Miller unconscious, forehead split open, blood crawling down his face. She grabbed him, shook gently. Miller, hey, stay with me. His eyelids fluttered. Confusion lived there, pain, something like shame, as if injury was weakness. Soldiers died with pride sometimes. Behind her, Davidson dragged the co-pilot from twisted metal, face bloodied, arm limp at his side. The pilot, no, she didn't need to check. The angle of the neck told the story. Death sometimes arrived quietly, even in violence. Davidson's voice came harsh, panicked under forced calm. We need to move, they'll be here. Sarah wiped blood from her brow, shifted the weight of her rifle. Her shoulder throbbed, deep bruise, maybe more. Didn't matter. Pain lived after men quit. Radio's dead, the co-pilot wheezed. No signal went out. Which meant they vanished from the map. No cavalry. No backup. Just 3 injured men, and one woman carrying an invisible burden stitched into her uniform. She scanned the tree line through NVGs. Shadows moved, subtle, patient, deliberate. Wolves didn't rush. They encircled. East tree line, she murmured. Hostile movement. Davidson's eyes widened. How the hell did they know we were coming? That question hung like fog. She didn't answer because she felt the truth without proof, a leak, a traitor, something foul in the chain of command. A hunt before mission even started. But fear was a poison she refused to swallow. And mission still mattered. Get them up, she ordered, voice steady enough to anchor them. We move. They staggered away from the crash, deeper into forest. Cold air bit at exposed skin. Rain thickened, washing blood into earth like offering or apology. They found shelter in a cave, throne shaped in rock, low ceiling, narrow mouth, damp floor. Better than open ground. Not safe, but safer. Miller's breathing steadied with pressure bandage. Co-pilot drifted in and out of consciousness, shock gnawing his edges. Sarah wiped mud from his face, checked pulse, whispered calm words meant more for herself. Davidson paced, jittery energy coiled tight. We call abort, he said finally. Mission's compromised. We're down a man, no extraction. Sarah looked at him, expression still. Calm like steel cooled too long to be hot again. Those hostages don't have that luxury. They're diplomats, he snapped. Aid workers not. They're human. He froze. Truth disarmed better than weapons. You going to carry them all yourself, he bit out. Drag 12 bodies out of a fortress with 3 half-dead men. If I must. You're insane. She inhaled slow, feeling the ache in ribs, the taste of blood, the weight of duty. Not insanity, not pride. Purpose. I go, she said. You stay and secure them. Davidson's jaw locked. He wanted to argue. He wanted to be right. He wanted the world to bend around his doubt. But she was already moving, gear strapped, weapon ready, night breathing against her face like a promise or a threat. The patch, he muttered bitterly. Your grandfather probably fed you fairy tales. Soldiers die believing stories. She paused in the cave entrance. My grandfather survived wars no one wrote about. Maybe stories saved him. She stepped into the darkness. Rain swallowed her silhouette. Forest consumed sound. And behind her, Davidson whispered a thought meant for no one. If she makes it back alive, I'll believe in ghosts. Hours passed like slow bleeding. Mud clung to boots, cold gnawed bone. She moved deliberately, every step a negotiation with night. Her breathing matched wind, her heartbeat melted into rain. She became invisible not by technology but by mindset. The kind of quiet movement only earned through repeated failure, humiliation, and standing up again until silence became strength. Through scope she saw it, the compound. Not a camp, not militia. Too structured, too fortified. Guard towers, infrared trip lines, drones idle on rooftop. Not amateur work. Professionals. which meant the hostages were currency, not morality. But something else hung heavy, a wrongness in the air, like betrayal breathed here, and she sensed it wasn't foreign. Then a twig snapped behind her. She spun, rifle raised, breath sharp, finger brushing trigger. Colonel Tangsdell, materialized from shadow like darkness itself, released her. "Stand down, Lieutenant." "Ma'am, what how?" "No time." The colonel handed her a secure tablet, glowing faintly under rain and leaves. "These aren't aid workers. They're intelligence assets, compromised. If they break, everything in the Asia-Pacific theater collapses." Images flashed, maps, identities, codes, safehouse lists, fragile threads holding nations steady. And if they fell? Chaos. A phrase surfaced in Sarah's mind, spoken earlier, ignored until now. "What do you know about Task Force Relentless?" Her grandfather's voice echoed from another life. "Wear it, when the time comes." "What does this have to do with?" "The patch contains encryption keys," the colonel cut in. "Old protocol, Relentless protocol. We thought all keys were destroyed." Sarah's throat tightened. Her heartbeat stuttered. "It's real," she whispered, "all of it." The colonel held her gaze, something complicated hidden beneath command. Not admiration, not pity, history. "We have a mole, that's how they knew our route." Sarah absorbed the words. Heavy, dense, dangerous. "Who?" "We don't know, but they're close." A far-off explosion shook the valley. Gunfire flickered at compound perimeter. "Davidson." Or someone using his name to hide truth. "Your choice, Lieutenant." Tangsdell's voice dropped, low and steady. "Walk away and no one blames you, or step into a legacy older than your rank and pay the price." Sarah touched the patch, fingers brushing thread worn thin by time, love dying breath. Her grandfather didn't give her a story. He gave her duty. "I was born ready." She turned toward the compound, shadows alive. Mission redefined, destiny whispering through rain. Some people chased history. Others inherited it. And some walked into it knowing they might never walk back out. Tonight she was all three. What kind of legacy demanded blood before it revealed truth? The rain did not stop. It thickened, soaking through fabric, turning earth to sludge, turning every footstep into a promise. You go forward, you do not return the same. Sarah moved low along the ridge, the compound's floodlights sweeping like predatory eyes searching for warmth, for life, for weakness. Somewhere below, people prayed not to die. Somewhere behind, wounded friends prayed she returned. And somewhere deep in her bones, something older than fear whispered, "This is where you were always going." Her grandfather hadn't trained her with stories. He trained her with silence, with patience, with those long pauses where truth lived between words. She remembered sitting on his porch as a kid, cicadas humming, dusk settling like a blanket over the farm. "Why do you sit in quiet so much?" she once asked him. He smiled, a slow, tired thing touched by secrets. "Noise tells you what it wants. Silence tells you what it hides." Now, in this mountain jungle, silence hid guns and death and betrayal wearing familiar faces. Sarah crawled forward, belly against cold ground, rifle tucked tight, eyes scanning through NVG green haze. 2 guards, rotating every 90 seconds. The fence was reinforced, razor wire concealed under brush, ground sensors humming beneath soil. Not cartel, not militia, private military. The expensive kind. The kind governments used then pretended didn't exist. Why would they be here for NGO workers? Because they weren't NGO workers. They were the thread holding a region's stability. If they fell, a series of collapses would follow. Intelligence networks burned, alliances shattered, nations destabilized. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a fault line in global power. And she had walked into it wearing a relic most soldiers mocked. A soft rustle behind her. She didn't jump, instincts were older than adrenaline. She lowered breath, hand hovering over pistol before she turned slowly. Colonel Tangsdell crouched in brush, watching the pattern of lights, her silhouette merging with night like she'd been made for shadow. "They're moving assets deeper inside," she whispered. "They know we're here." "How?" Tangsdell didn't look at her, eyes on compound. "Because the traitor isn't just in our chain, he's close, very close." Sarah's stomach tightened, a cold knot forming beneath ribs. She didn't ask who. She didn't need to. The truth was already circling like hawks above dead fields. Davidson. The one who sneered at her patch. The one who mocked legacy. The one who wanted to lead badly enough to bleed for it or betray for it. But certainty was dangerous in war. Doubt saved more lives than arrogance ever did. "What if we're wrong?" Sarah murmured. Tangsdell exhaled softly, not frustration, not uncertainty, sadness. "In this line of work, Lieutenant, you learn to trust patterns, not people." Sarah swallowed. The colonel's voice felt like history speaking, like another woman once had to doubt men she bled beside. "Gear check," Tangsdell murmured. They moved with quiet efficiency. Glock mags, smoke canisters, tiny shape charge for breach, suppressors locked on, comms low-frequency mode. A two-woman assault team against a fortress. Impossible odds. But real operators knew something Hollywood never understood. Most missions were never about killing. They were about slipping past death and being forgotten by it. "What's the extraction plan?" Sarah asked. Tangsdell's lips curved slightly. "Same as every mission that matters." "Meaning survive, adapt, improvise, hope." The colonel pointed to a drainage outlet leading under the outer wall, only big enough for one person, belly sliding through icy runoff. The smell hit even through rain, rot, chemical waste, stagnation. A grave's mouth. They would go inside anyway. Sarah steadied her breathing. She expected fear to be loud, but it was quiet. A calm river flowing under ribs, not because she trusted success, but because purpose drowned panic. They waited for the sweep of the spotlight to pass, then crawled. Mud-caked hands, knees grinding over rock. Her fingers trembled once, not from fear but from adrenaline that didn't have a home yet. She pushed it down. Emotion had its place. Not here, not now. The drain was smaller up close, darker, smelled like rusted earth and death that never got a funeral. "You first," Tangsdell whispered. Sarah didn't hesitate. Leadership wasn't who giving orders, it was who entered the unknown first. She slid into the grate, chest scraping metal, cold water biting skin, the world shrinking to tunnel walls and breath and pulse. Every inch forward was suffocation and faith. If a guard walked above, if the grate jammed, if sensors pinged movement, they'd die in a hole without a fight. But survival sometimes meant surrendering control. Minutes stretched until space widened. Sarah pushed upward, emerging behind a stack of supply crates inside the perimeter. Tangsdell followed silently. Only their eyes moved, scanning, calculating, breathing war, not fear. Voices drifted from a nearby barracks, Slavic accents. Russian, Ukrainian, no, Polish. Private contractors, not state. That meant deniability. That meant someone very powerful paid for this silence. Tangsdell's hand brushed Sarah's arm lightly, signal for hold. Two guards approached, close enough to smell their breath. Their rifles swung lazily, confidence in their posture. Professionals but relaxed, not expecting ghosts. Sarah waited, letting time slow. Patience was weapon. Impulse was a grave. When they turned, she moved one step, arm hook, forearm locking, carotid. Silence. Control. Weight lowered gently to avoid sound. Tangsdell mirrored her, two bodies dragged into shadow. Shadows welcomed truth more than light ever did. They skirted the inner courtyard, staying low beneath barrack windows, past satellite uplink cabling, through the smell of diesel, sweat, fear. Then voices sharp, command tone, Through cracked warehouse door, Sarah glimpsed movement, a man packing, tablet in hand. Davidson. Not injured, not hiding, giving orders. The world slowed, heartbeat loud. His voice traveled, calm, clip trained. Prepare transport. We relocate in 15. Relentless protocol is compromised. Relentless. The word hit her chest like a bullet. Tangsdale's grip tightened on her wrist. It was not warning. It was confirmation. There he was. Their betrayer. A man who had stood beside them in formation, who joked, who sweated with them, who breathed the same air. He moved like someone who belonged here, not infiltrating, commanding. Sarah felt heat rise in her chest, not rage. Betrayal was colder. A knife dipped in ice, twisting slow. The badger patch on her shoulder felt heavier, like it had been waiting for this truth. Tangsdale leaned close, breath barely sound. We take him later, focus on hostages. Sarah nodded once. Duty over vengeance. Mission over ego. The world didn't care about her pain, it cared about results. They slipped to the rear wing, reinforced metal, keypad entry. Tangsdale connected a micro device. Silent cracking signal encryption older than most modern security systems. Old tech breaking new war. Your grandfather designed this, she whispered. Only reason this works. Something in Sarah's throat tightened, pride strangling with grief. The key clicked. Door opened. Inside, 12 people huddled, pale, starved, wrists bruised. Eyes widened at sight of soldiers. Hope flickered, fragile, desperate, painful to witness. One woman sobbed. One man tried to stand but collapsed, body shaking. Real human cost, not numbers, not strategy, flesh and fear. The reason soldiers bled quietly and dark. Sarah knelt, soft voice anchoring them. We're getting you home, stay low, stay quiet, stay behind me. Hope could be dangerous, but now it was fuel. They moved out slowly, bodies weak, every step heavy with survival instinct. Sarah shielded the group, weapon up, scanning constantly. Tangsdale covered rear. They reached maintenance shed where tunnel access lay. Then a shadow detached from darkness. Davidson. Gun raised. Expression wrong, too calm, too smooth, like he had rehearsed this betrayal more than he'd rehearsed loyalty. You don't know what you're part of, he said quietly. I know enough. You think your grandfather was a hero. Her pulse stumbled. He founded a program that destabilized nations, created enemies bigger than our country could handle. That patch isn't legacy, it's guilt. His voice wasn't hateful, it was something worse, convinced. Belief turned rotten. Put your weapon down, he said softly. Walk away. No one will blame you, this isn't your war. Sarah's breath shook, not from fear but from the truth that war never announced itself. It arrived in whispers, in inherited patches, in choices made before you were born. My name is Reeves, she murmured. My war started before I knew how to walk. Davidson's eyes twitched, a crack in calm. She didn't wait. Waiting was death. She fired. His shoulder snapped back, gun clattering. He staggered, shock-breaking mask. Tangsdale grabbed him, disarming, wrist lock snapping, bone clean. He gasped, wounded pride louder than physical pain. Sarah stared at him, not triumph, not anger, just a quiet mourning. Betrayal always felt like a funeral without ceremony. Outside, rotors thundered, extraction arriving, maybe theirs, maybe enemy reinforcement. The tunnel beckoned, narrow, dark, salvation disguised as suffocation. She touched the patch, breathing steady. She wasn't her grandfather's shadow anymore. She was his answer. We move. Hostages crawled into tunnel. Tangsdale dragged Davidson behind, traitor in chains. Rain pounded harder, night roaring like the world knew secrets were unraveling. As Sarah entered the darkness again, she whispered not to anyone living, but to the dead who had carried this burden first. I'm here now, I won't fail you. And somewhere, deep in memory or something beyond it, she felt a reply. Legacy isn't sown, it's tested. How do you carry 12 lives through darkness, while your own certainty bleeds at the edges? Crawling into that narrow tunnel felt like surrendering every ounce of comfort the world ever offered. Sarah dropped to her elbows and knees, damp earth pressing against her chest, breath fogging in stale air that hadn't tasted sunlight in years. Water pooled beneath her, cold enough to sting through fabric. Metal scraped above as rotor blades churned somewhere overhead, enemy or friendly, impossible to know. The hostages moved in a shaking line behind her, broken voices whispering prayers, names, promises. Tangsdell came last, dragging Davidson, his wrists bound, his breath labored, equal parts pain and fury. Betrayal had a sound, and it wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was the quiet way someone watched you without remorse. The tunnel stretched forward, tight and unforgiving. Sarah forced her body past fatigue, elbows grinding rock. Pain was just another shadow, familiar, constant, not worth fearing. The world narrowed to motion and heartbeat and the scrape of fabric against mud. Halfway through, someone whimpered a choked, terrified sound. "Please, I can't breathe." Sarah stopped, turned enough to lift her voice low but steady. "You're doing it. Every inch is survival. Breathe with me." She inhaled slow, exhaled slower. A shaky breath echoed her. Fear was contagious, but so was calm if you offered it quietly enough. They crawled again. How long until daylight? How long until betrayal finished its circle? And why, even now, did she still wish Davidson wasn't the traitor? Because she had fought beside him. Because soldiers weren't supposed to be enemies inside the wire. Because trust inside a uniform should mean something. But uniforms were cloth, people were complicated. The tunnel sloped up, stone brushing her helmet. A faint breeze reached her, air that smelled like moss and freedom and gunpowder carried by wind. They were close. Sarah pushed up through tangled vines and spilled into a narrow ravine hidden under thick canopy. Moonlight filtered through branches. For one brief moment, she let herself breathe open air again. The hostages crawled out gasping like drowned souls reaching shore. Tangsdell emerged, dragging Davidson, whose face twisted in frustrated humiliation. One hostage collapsed against dirt, sobbing with relief. Sarah resisted the urge to kneel, to rest, to feel human for even a breath. No time. No luxury. No softness allowed yet. "We moved to LZ, Tangsdell whispered, eyes already scanning tree line. "Copy." Sarah motioned the hostages forward. They moved in a tight group, legs unsteady, some leaning on each other. Their clothes hung loose, their skin sallow, but something in their eyes sparked a live, fragile hope burning stubbornly. Thunder rolled distantly, or was it artillery? Hard to tell here, where the sky and ground both felt like they wanted to swallow them whole. Leaves dripped from the recent storm, branches shaking under passing wind. Every sound felt amplified, each crack of twig, each rustle of brush. Somewhere behind, a dog barked, then two more, enemy patrol, time shrinking. Sarah raised her fist, halt. Hostages froze. Sweat clung cold at the base of her neck. She lowered to one knee, scanned. Movement. 3 figures advancing at tree edge. Weapons raised, searching, systematic. She steadied her rifle, breath in, slow press of trigger, then Tangsdell's hand touched her wrist. She shook her head once. Not yet, let them move past. Patience wasn't passive. Patience was strategy sharpened into blade. The patrol passed. Sarah exhaled silently, tension leaking from muscles only to return as another weight, always another weight. When they reached the clearing marked on her map, the wind shifted, bringing rotor noise. Faint, then louder. A helicopter skimmed treetops, blades chopping air in familiar cadence. Extraction. Relief surged, brief, dangerous, but even hope carried suspicion now. Enemy could spoof signals, could mimic anything. Sarah lifted a flare, infrared, invisible to naked eye. Pulse code, friend-foe verification. The helicopter dipped its nose, flashing coded light in response, correct pattern. Friendly. And yet she didn't lower her guard. Instinct didn't relax just because protocol agreed. Instinct listened to gut, and gut whispered caution. The aircraft descended, kicking up dirt and leaves, wind whipping hair and clothing. Hostages shielded faces. The side door slid open. Miller stood inside, pale, arm in sling but alive. His jaw clenched tight, his eyes burning with something fierce and furious and loyal. Sarah's heartbeat stuttered, not from surprise, from relief she didn't know she needed. He saw Davidson bound and bruised, and his face hardened like forged steel. Betrayal hurt more when it breathed your air first. Move, Tangsdell ordered over engine roar. Hostages stumbled forward. Crew pulled them aboard. Sarah stayed outside, rifle up, watching tree line. Tangsdell lifted Davidson into cabin like cargo rather than comrade. He spat blood onto metal floor. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed. "You're rewriting a history you don't understand." Tangsdell didn't answer. Silence was harsher than any remark. Sarah climbed in last. As she settled, Miller leaned just close enough to be heard over engine scream. "Knew you'd make it," he murmured. She didn't smile, but something softened in her chest, a thread pulling loose from the tight weave of duty and fear. Door slammed, helicopter surged up, trees shrank beneath. The world widened again. And then the pilot's voice crackled through headsets. "Message from command, direct return, priority debrief." Sarah stared out as clouds swallowed them. Hostages cried silent tears. Tangsdell sat still, jaw firm. Davidson bled silently in restraints. The rotor thump shaped itself into a question beating against her skull. When did victory start feeling like another ambush? Fort Benning reappeared like a memory she wasn't ready to revisit, concrete, steel, flags fluttering in rigid lines. Normal life, but not for them. Soldiers saluted. Whispers followed. They were ghosts stepping into daylight, proof of something classified and dangerous. Sarah walked the corridor toward the secure debrief room, boots echoing like judgment. Miller limped beside her. Tangsdell led, posture carved from command and exhaustion. Davidson was dragged separately, head low, wrists cuffed, surrounded by quiet rage disguised as military discipline. She didn't look back. Some endings didn't deserve witness. Inside the room, General Hayes waited, eyes heavy, face carved by long war and longer secrets. "At ease," he said, but no one relaxed. The room dimmed as monitors flickered on. Mission summary, footage, satellite capture, code logs, like the operation was already history. He looked at Sarah first. "You disobeyed standard abort protocol." "I completed the objective." "You risked your team." "They're alive." Silence sharpened. Hayes leaned forward. "You also exposed a mole embedded for 5 years." Emotion flickered behind his eyes, not pride, something older, guilt, recognition. "You're not here to be congratulated," he said quietly. "You're here because truth wasn't meant to surface yet." Sarah stiffened. Truth isn't supposed to be buried either. Hayes exhaled. "Your grandfather said the same thing." The room faded. Noise dropped away. "My grandfather." Not myth, not imagined. Real threads pulling forward from past into present. Hayes placed a thin envelope on table, worn edges, handwritten name, her name. "He asked me to give you this when you earned it." Earned, not inherited. Earned through blood and loneliness and relentless grit. Her hands trembled when she reached, the only time that night her control faltered. She opened it slowly, like it might break if touched too fast. A photograph, young soldiers in battered fatigues, same patch on shoulders, faces sharp with purpose. Her grandfather in front, jaw firm, eyes knowing too much. On the back scrawled in faded ink, "When you wear the badger, You don't belong to a unit. You belong to a promise. Dig deep. Never hide. Granddad. Her breath shook, not loud but enough. Tangsdale's gaze softened, rare and brief. Hayes continued, voice low like confession in empty chapel. Task Force Relentless was never built to win glory. It was built to prevent wars everyone else pretends don't exist. And my grandfather, he saw what was coming. He sacrificed his public honor so others could carry this work quietly. Sacrifice, the word fit like weight in her chest. Your patch wasn't proof of rank, Hayes said. It was a key, a test, and a warning. Sarah's voice barely rose above whisper. What now? Hayes slid a new patch across table, modern design, sleek thread. Same badger shape but darker, sharper, silent as midnight justice. You don't wear history anymore, he said. You carry its future. Her fingers closed on the patch. It felt heavier than cloth. Command needs someone to rebuild Relentless, Hayes continued. To select, train, lead. Someone who survived not by chance but by choosing the hard path every time. Miller shifted slightly, pride flickering like a match head. You're activating me, Sarah whispered. No, Hayes said, we're asking you. Different choice mattered. She thought of mud tunnels and trembling hands and 12 lives walking again because she did not stop. She thought of betrayal breaking like bone. She thought of her grandfather's dying whisper. Wear it proud. Sarah lifted her chin. I accept. Hayes nodded once, approval given like an oath returned. But before she left, he added quietly, one day you'll have to choose what he chose. Duty over legacy, truth over yourself. She didn't answer. She didn't need to, because in her bones she already knew. Duty had chosen her first. As she walked out, patch clutched tight, she wondered if strength always felt like loneliness before it felt like power. If leadership always began in silence. If the world ever rewarded quiet warriors or only remembered loud ones. But the mission wasn't to be remembered. The mission was to exist in the space between history and secrecy, where dignity didn't boast, it acted. Her grandfather hadn't given her a patch. He had given her a direction. A burden shaped like purpose. And now it was hers. Not inherited. Earned. Outside, evening wind brushed her face, cool, real, grounding. She wasn't done. She was just stepping into the real war. When did duty start feeling like a living thing, breathing in her chest, packing behind her ribs like a caged animal that finally tasted open sky? 2 weeks passed, but sleep still felt like something she visited, not lived in. The world outside continued with morning formations, coffee steam rising in cold air, cadets running drills, laughter echoing from people who didn't know the cost of silence. But beneath Fort Bragg's surface, where fluorescent lights hummed over hidden corridors and reinforced doors, something was being sculpted from shadow. Task Force Relentless reborn. Not announced, not celebrated, just begun, quiet, necessary like a heartbeat. Sarah traveled the underground halls first alone, then followed by a whisper of movement, officers, analysts, logistics personnel she didn't know yet, all pretending not to stare at her patch. Some eyes held confusion, others respect, and a few fear. She didn't want fear. Fear fractured teams, but fear was earned by truth, and truth here was heavy. The training bay smelled like oil, sweat, and ambition. Sim rounds lay scattered, steel targets dented, tactical boards filled with impossible scenarios, and 30 soldiers hand-picked stood in formation waiting for her. Men and women, Rangers, recon Marines, a former Delta operator, 2 intelligence officers with stillness in their posture, the kind that meant they'd seen real ghosts. 1 cyber specialist who looked like she hadn't slept since high school finals. And Miller, alive, scar over brow now healed to a pale reminder. When she walked in, his chin lifted, not worship, not awe. Recognition. He knew what it cost her to stand here. She moved to the center, boots steady against polished concrete. They watched her like soldiers watch danger, not afraid but ready. She looked at them all, people waiting to be shaped into something history would never acknowledge. She wondered if they knew what they were asking for. "Most units train to fight," she said quietly. "You train to prevent fights from ever reaching headlines." Silence settled, respectful, dense. "You won't get medals or credit, sometimes not even graves." Her voice didn't rise. Leadership here wasn't volume, it was gravity. "You will lose sleep before you lose battles. You will carry guilt without applause. You will operate where truth is fog and loyalty cuts deeper than steel." Their eyes sharpened. No one shifted, some swallowed hard. "Anyone who wants glory can leave now." No one moved. "Good." "Relentless isn't a name," she finished. "It's a promise. We dig deep and we never hide." A beat, a breath, a hum in the walls like the building itself approved. Miller stepped forward, handing out new patches. Modern Badger insignia, clean threaded edges, matte black threads catching light like quiet conviction. One by one, soldiers accepted them with hands steady, faces carved with decision. When Miller reached her, he hesitated only a fraction, then nodded. She took her patch last, fingers brushing thread. Tradition, reborn in modern thread. Legacy turning into future. The training that followed stretched days into blurs, CQB drills, silent breach practice, encrypted signal drills, psychological conditioning, resistance simulations. No speeches, no theatrics, just sweat, grit, failure, adjustment. Sarah didn't stand back and watch. She moved among them, sweating, bleeding, making mistakes and correcting them in real time. They learned her strengths, strategy under pressure, ability to read terrain and people, emotional stamina. They also learned her fault. She still carried too much alone. She didn't delegate enough. She bore weight like her bones were built from duty instead of calcium. That weakness didn't go unnoticed. One night after drills, Tangsdell found her alone on the range, firing controlled rounds into steel. Her stance perfect, her face empty. "You're not building soldiers," Tangsdell said, quiet, stepping beside her. "You're building survivors." "Isn't that the point?" "No," the colonel's tone hardened. "The point is to build leaders, including you." Sarah loaded a fresh magazine, but didn't lift her rifle. Tangsdell folded her arms. "You think carrying everything yourself makes you strong. It keeps others from breaking. It makes you brittle." The older woman's eyes softened. "Your grandfather tried to carry everything too. It cost him." A beat, rain-tapped roof outside range. Sarah's throat tightened. "You knew him," she said quietly. Not a question, a realization. Tangsdell nodded once. "We all serve the same ghost in this work. Some haunt, some guide, some do both." Sarah swallowed. The target blurred briefly, tears she refused to acknowledge. "He didn't want the patch to burden you," Tangsdell added. "He wanted it to prepare you. That means trusting the people you lead, not shielding them." Sarah fired a single round, center mass, clean. A tear slid anyway, disappearing before it could fall far enough to be seen. "I don't want to lose them." "You will," Tangsdell said softly. "Leadership isn't about preventing loss. It's honoring it by making it meaningful." That hurt more than any wound. Weeks passed. The team refined into something sharp and patient and terrifying in silence. They trained to breach walls without sound, hack systems without trace, blend where others stared, disappear where others demanded applause. They weren't loud like heroes, they were precise like surgeons. And still, Sarah searched for cracks, for risk, for identity in this role she grew into like armor that wasn't supposed to be comfortable. Every night she sat in the secure bunk room staring at the envelope her grandfather left, corners worn, fingerprint smudges from her touching it too many times. One night she unfolded a second note she hadn't dared read before. Short, handwritten. "One day they will doubt you the way they doubted me." Stand anyway. The world doesn't need loud courage. It needs quiet backbone. She closed the note, chest heavy with something like pride tangled in grief. A knock tapped quietly on door. Miller leaned in. Command wants you in the briefing room. She followed him down hall, heart adjusting tempo subconsciously. The body remembered briefing tension like a scar remembering fire. General Hayes waited with two analysts and a digital board lit red danger color. Situation map, satellite feed, coordinates blinking. Hayes looked up, eyes already carrying weight of decisions made before she entered. We have actionable intel, he said. False humanitarian initiative, front for arms trafficking and political leverage, civilian casualties imminent. Sarah stepped closer, reading labels, routes, names. One location blinked brighter, active threat. Who's on the ground? She asked. Hayes held her gaze. You are. Silence, not shock, acceptance. The world never rested, so neither did those who protected it from the shadows. Tangsdell entered, handing Sarah sealed documents. Orders, objective. Then Hayes's voice dropped. There also may be connection to the mole we captured. Sarah's pulse slowed. Davidson's name hung invisible but heavy between them. And Hayes added, a communication packet went active using an old Relentless cipher 2 hours ago. The room shifted, air thickened, Sarah's spine tensed. Could be coincidence, an analyst said weakly. Tangsdell shook her head. There are no coincidences in shadow warfare. Sarah folded arms, grounding herself. Mission timeline. Wheels up in 2 hours. Authorization level. Deep black. Meaning no public footprint, no diplomatic safety net, no recognition. Miller stepped forward, teams ready. Sarah nodded, breathing steady. Nerves were natural. Courage wasn't lack of fear, it was standing anyway. Hayes spoke one last sentence, soft, almost fragile in its truth. This operation may answer what your grandfather spent his life fighting. She didn't flinch, but inside something ancient stood upright. Purpose sharpened, legacy awakened, duty breathed. Sarah flipped mission binder closed. We'll finish what he started. Hayes nodded. Godspeed, Lieutenant. As she walked out, Miller matched her pace. You good? He asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. She stared down the hallway that led to armory, to aircraft, to truth she didn't yet know if she was ready for. No, she admitted, but I'm ready. He nodded, relief disguised as acceptance. Then so are we. She touched the patch on her arm. The thread felt warm, or maybe it was her blood, her fear, her resolve shaping into the same thing. Not destiny. Duty chosen again. Outside in the prep bay, 30 operators lifted their heads, eyes on her, waiting not for orders but direction. Faith, not obligation. Leadership wasn't being followed. It was being trusted enough to lead. Sarah raised her chin, breath steady, and whispered to herself more than anyone. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it acts. And then louder to her team. Gear up, we dig deep. They moved, she moved, and somewhere history exhaled. Because war wasn't loud music or blazing glory. Sometimes it was a woman tightening her vest at 300, stepping into the dark with a quiet spine and a patch stitched by ghosts. And this time she wasn't walking alone. Why did stepping into darkness feel more honest than walking in daylight? Night missions didn't start when rotors spun. They started in the quiet minutes before, when soldiers checked gear one last time, not because they doubted equipment, but because doubt lived in the spaces we refused to acknowledge. Sarah stood in the armory, vest tightened, radio tested, gloves secured. Her reflection in the steel door looked back at her, not hard, not cold, but certain, like someone who had stopped asking permission from the world. Miller approached, loading his magazine with clinical precision. 2 insertion teams, he murmured. We breach at staggered entry points. Silent until contact, she asked. He nodded, then controlled collapse if necessary. Controlled collapse. Clean wording for messy truth, neutralize threats, preserve innocence, accept casualties if forced. A math no one wanted to do but someone always did. Sarah clipped her carbine sling, feeling the familiar weight settle against ribs. Not heavy, grounding. Tools carried meaning. She wasn't armed because she feared the enemy. She was armed because she refused to let the innocent bleed alone. "Birds ready," Miller said. She exhaled slow. Fear lived somewhere, but not where she'd expected. It wasn't fear of death or injury. It was fear of leading others into something they might not return from. Her grandfather had carried that same quiet dread. She could see it now in memory, in the way his jaw would set when the evening news played, in how he watched the world like he still belonged to a fight no one else saw. When they boarded the aircraft, blades humming like a heartbeat before sprint, Sarah sat near the open ramp. Wind whipped hair loose under helmet straps. Night stretched endless. Her team strapped in around her, silent, checking gear, eyes steady. No bravado, no jokes. Real warriors didn't need noise to remind themselves they were brave. The pilot's voice crackled through headsets. ETA 14 minutes, radio discipline tight, hostile air surveillance in sector. Tangsdell sat across, chin lifted slightly, shoulders relaxed, not casual, controlled. She held calm the way a surgeon held a scalpel, sharper than steel. "You thinking about him?" she asked quietly, not looking directly at Sarah. Sarah didn't pretend not to understand. Always. "He'd be proud," the colonel said. "Would he?" Tangsdell's gaze shifted to her, thoughtful, weighing truth. "He didn't want you to inherit his burden, but you didn't inherit it. You accepted it. That's different." Sarah looked down at her gloves, fingers flexing like they needed to release something inside her or hold tighter. "Sometimes it feels like I'm chasing a ghost." Tangsdell shook her head. "No, you're answering one." The ramp light dimmed, pre-drop signal. Conversations died. The team rose, checking straps and nodding final confirmations. Miller approached her side. "Eyes up," he said quietly. "You're here, not your past, not his, you." Funny how 3 words could anchor someone better than body armor. The helicopter dipped low, trees rushed beneath. Sensors pinged. A voice on comm, "Laser thread grid ahead, we thread it." Sarah leaned toward edge, scanning, thin beams of enemy detection webbing the tree line below. The pilot navigated like threading a needle at speed, rotor wash barely brushing leaves. Precision was survival. Then landing zone. Dirt kicked up, night swallowed by movement, boots hit ground silent as memory. Team dispersed like mist, shadows taking shape. Sarah led the forward element, Miller at her 6, 2 more fanned wide. Tangsdell's team arced the opposite flank. The compound ahead looked almost peaceful behind its humanitarian cover, floodlights soft, structures low, fences disguised under tarps and aid banners. A lie built with compassion's language. Sarah raised fist, halt. A guard tower silhouette shifted. She lowered rifle scope, breath steadying to match heartbeat rhythm. 2 guards, non-uniform, private contractors disguised as volunteers until close inspection. 2 front, 1 rooftop thermal behind solar array, she whispered. "Copy," Miller murmured. They moved, silent approach, grass brushing boots, mud clinging to knees, rain-soft air thick around them. Sarah positioned behind a stack of crates, sight picture clean. Trigger press, whisper suppressed round, target fell with no cry, just a soft exhale into dirt. Miller mirrored the rooftop takedown, quiet collapse. No time to think, only flow. They breached the perimeter fence silently, wire spread, bodies slipping through without disturbing earth. Inside, tents blocked sightlines. Soft generator hum, voices low, casual, the false calm of people who believe they own time. Sarah signaled split. 2 operators flanked. She knelt at a window, peering inside. Stacked crates, Communication console and maps, movement routes, coordination notes, foreign symbols, not humanitarian, not even purely mercenary. Something state-dependent, hybrid, dangerous, the kind of operation where truth dissolved into geopolitics no one admitted. A rustle, footsteps. A figure stepped inside room, back to her, humming softly. She slid through side door, knife silent in gloved palm, arm around throat, sharp control, hand over mouth, weight lowered. Breath gone, body still. Clean, quiet. But as she rose, she saw something pinned to wall, a photograph. Grainy, old. A younger General Hayes, standing beside men in unmarked fatigues. And her grandfather. Stomach flipped, not shock, recognition. He had been here once. Not the same place, but same war, old and new connected like veins through time. She whispered under breath, "What did you know, Granddad?" No answer but memory. Duty was generational, regret too. Outside, sudden burst of suppressed gunfire, short, surgical. Tangsdale's team engaging a roaming patrol. "Status," Sarah whispered into Mike. "Clear, no alarm." She moved again, deeper into compound, toward central structure. Heartbeat steady but chest heavier. Not fear, responsibility's weight. They reached the main door, reinforced, coded lock. Miller knelt, bypass kit ready. Sparks whispered. Circuit hummed, click. Inside, basement corridor, fluorescent hum, humidity, concrete walls sweating secrets. They moved downstairs, rifles up. Sound faint, human, someone crying. Not fear crying, pain crying. They reached a holding cell. A woman, wrist zip-tied, face bruised, not hostage, operative, American. Eyes met Sarah's, shock, then relief, then warning. "They know you're coming," she whispered hoarsely. "It's a trap, he's here." "He?" Sarah didn't ask who. Some truths didn't need names. They hit like cold steel already placed against throat. "We extract you," Sarah said. "No," the woman rasped, shaking head fiercely. "They want you, they don't care about me." "I'm not leaving you." The woman's voice broke. "He planned for you to be the one they catch. He said you'll follow the legacy right into the dark." Sarah froze, breath sharp. Miller tensed beside her. "Legacy, trap, bait." A shadow moved behind glass. A voice, distorted speaker, low, amused. "So you came." Sarah lifted rifle, scanning corners, mind calculating. No target, just voice. "Just like he said you would." And there a figure stepped from corner of observation room behind glass, hands behind back, calm smile. Davidson. Dressed clean, unchained, alive and free inside enemy facility. Miller stiffened. Tangsdale's voice crackled urgently in calm. "Too late, Reeves, pull back, it's compromised." Davidson tilted head like curious predator. "You think I was captured? I was transferred." "Transferred, not taken." He wasn't a failed mole, he was embedded. Sarah's pulse slowed, rage and clarity merging into something frighteningly calm. "You sold out your country," she murmured. He smiled thin. "I saved it. We operate in shadows because the world is becoming one. Your grandfather knew that. He just couldn't stomach what it required." He stood for honor. He stood for memory. I stand for future. He stepped closer to the glass, expression shifting, pity masquerading as conviction. "You inherited a story. I inherited reality, and reality isn't romantic." Sarah steadied, breathing. "Where are the others you took?" "Oh, Lieutenant," Davidson sighed. "You think this facility matters, this is noise. You came for the wrong thing again." He tapped the glass once, casual as flipping a page. Lights cut, emergency alarms blared, doors sealed, steel locks thundered shut above. "Goodbye, Reeves." Static swallowed comms, hall lights turned red, sirens shattered silence. Trap fully sprung. Miller gripped her shoulder. "Orders." Sarah inhaled, deep, grounding. Her grandfather once told her fear lives loudest right before courage steps in. He had not been wrong. "We don't break," she whispered. "We adapt." Behind her, the woman in restraint sobbed, not helplessly, but like someone who just witnessed fate close jaws. Tangsdale's muffled voice crackled through static, faint, distorted. "Hold position, we're coming to you." Sarah lifted rifle, jaw set. "We hold ground," she said. "We don't run." Miller nodded, raising weapon beside hers. "Relentless." Sarah felt the word settle in marrow. Not name, identity. "Relentless," she echoed. If legacy invited war, she would meet it. Not loud, not desperate, but unbreakable. They dug in. Red lights bathed steel walls like blood memory. Footsteps rushed from deeper corridors, dozens, then more. The building breathed with coming violence. Sarah lowered her stance, breath slow, purpose sharp. She remembered a line her grandfather whispered once, hands shaking with age, eyes burning with a truth she hadn't understood yet. "Sometimes the trap isn't to kill you. Sometimes it's to see what you become." Now she knew. She became this. Quiet strength in a red-lit hallway, outnumbered but not outwilled, carrying legacy not as burden but blade. And when the first enemy silhouettes appeared, rifles raised, she whispered under breath like prayer or promise. "Dignity doesn't shout." She squeezed trigger. "It endures." And darkness erupted. There are moments in combat when time does not bend, it breaks. Pieces scatter, perception fractures. The world becomes a series of sharp snapshots burned into the eyes and soul. Muzzle flash. Steel corridor. Red emergency, lights bleeding against concrete. Breath drawn tight, lungs working in deliberate cadence. Gunfire cracking like nerves splitting open. Sarah moved first, not out of instinct but out of choice. Not because she was fearless, but because she refused to spare fear space to breathe. First shot, center of mass. Second, follow through, precise, tidy, like she'd been born to measure consequences in quarter seconds. Miller flowed beside her, clean, controlled, a soldier sculpted by loyalty more than discipline. His shots answered hers like a rhythm, neither leading nor following, just existing in perfect parallel. Bodies fell, boots skidded, a clatter of weapons hitting concrete echoed down the hall. Stillness, but only for breath, not safety. Sarah's voice cut through smoke, low and steady. "Count rounds." It wasn't a reminder. It was reassurance. She was still thinking, still leading, still her. The woman they'd freed pressed against the cell bars, shaking, eyes wide like someone watching a storm rip trees apart while knowing she might become one of them. Sarah met her gaze, steady, not harsh. "We'll get you out," she murmured. Promises were dangerous in war. She only made ones she intended to bleed for. Footsteps thundered again, more boots, heavier cadence, training not mercenary slop. Reinforcements, professional. This wasn't random militia muscle, these were operatives. Trained, funded, purposeful. Davidson hadn't defected into chaos. He'd defected into structure. Miller glanced toward her, breath controlled but eyes burning. "We fall back." "No," she whispered. Retreat was not always strategic. Sometimes it was surrender disguised in logic. And this mission had already crossed the line where logic bowed to duty. But there was something else too, something colder sitting in Sarah's chest. "He set this stage. He wants us to run. Never give the enemy the satisfaction of watching you move the way they expect." She swept left, shouldered against the reinforced door, rifle raised. Tangsdale's scrambled voice cracked faint through calm interference. "Hold breach 3 minutes. 3 minutes could be a lifetime. Or an ending." Sarah pressed deeper into the corridor's next segment, Miller covering rear, hostages holding tight behind them. Darkness felt familiar, like a childhood friend she never fully trusted. The air smelled of gun oil, metal, adrenaline, and old fear. A flashbang clattered near the corner. Sarah lunged, grabbing Miller's vest, yanking him down behind crates. Flash, boom, sound swallowed the world for half a heartbeat. Ears rang, vision shook, thought stuttered. She rose anyway, weapon up before balance returned because hesitation wasn't a luxury. Two silhouettes rushed. She fired, throat tight with controlled fury. One dropped. Miller took the other. Then quiet. Not silent. Silence implied peace. This was the quiet after a scream, raw, trembling, waiting for the echo of violence to answer. Miller exhaled, voice tight. "We need to move, Sarah." He didn't call her lieutenant. Not disrespect. Recognition. In war, titles fell away. Humans remained. Sarah scanned ceiling, floor, shadows, calculating. The hallway split ahead, left stairs up, right deeper into basement tunnels. Up led to open ground, extraction. Right led into unknown, into dark arteries of a facility that lied for a living. Sarah's pulse thudded once. Not fear, decision. "They expect us to go up," she whispered, "so we go down." Miller stared. There might not be an exit down. "There wasn't supposed to be an entry here either," she answered gently. "And yet we're inside." He nodded once, trust absolute. The kind soldiers didn't give freely. The kind earned in blood and quiet leadership. They moved right. Down the second stairwell, air changed, colder, recycled, humming with electrical current. As they descended, emergency lights flickered, throwing shadows like restless spirits against concrete walls. Hostile movement above. "Their ceiling levels," Miller murmured, checking tablet feed hacked into facility cams. Sarah nodded. "Good, let them trap their own guns upstairs." They reached a heavy blast door, cracked open by earlier chaos. Sarah wedged fingers, muscles straining, Miller pushing beside her. Door groaned open enough to slip through. They entered a corridor lined with sealed rooms, numbers etched in metal. But room 7M stopped them cold. Not because of what they saw. Because of what Sarah felt. A presence of history. Of buried truth. Of ghosts. This wasn't a compound. It was a vault for secrets that never made it to official archives. Miller brushed dust off a metal plaque beside door 7M, faint lettering, almost worn smooth. TFR Archives. Relentless. Her blood chilled. Her grandfather. His work. His truth. Buried here, in the same dark that now held her hostage. Sarah shoved door. It creaked open, stale air escaping like it resented disturbance. Inside, shelves of files, hardened cases, encrypted drives, old photographs pinned under cracked glass. Dust danced in beams of emergency light, like time trying to hide itself. She stepped in slow, reverent hand brushing files, as if recognizing family by touch. Then she froze. A photo lay on table, enlarged, grainy, but unmistakable. Her grandfather, General Hayes younger, and Davidson's handler, a man she recognized now from intelligence files flagged deep black. A tangled legacy. Not betrayal, fault line. Miller whispered, "Sarah, this is proof of everything." She swallowed. Proof isn't always gift, sometimes it's weight. Behind them, the rescued woman spoke, voice shaky. "They used this place to discredit your grandfather. They hid what he really was trying to stop." Sarah turned, eyes burning with something sharper than rage. What was he trying to stop? The woman swallowed. "The program Davidson serves. A world without borders, not for freedom but control. Relentless wasn't hunting enemies. It was hunting corruption inside our own alliances." Sarah's breath left her. Truth cut deeper than bullets. Before she could speak, footsteps echoed, not hurried. Confident, calm, like someone who owned these corridors. Davidson. His voice carried before his face appeared patient, almost regretful. You weren't supposed to find this room yet. Sarah turned slowly. You don't get to control timing anymore. He smirked, sad, almost pitying. I didn't betray the country, Sarah. I betrayed its illusions. You betrayed people. I traded the few for the future. Your grandfather couldn't. That's why he lost. He didn't lose, she whispered. He protected what mattered. Davidson's eyes softened, dangerous in their sincerity. Legacy is just another word for chains. I'm breaking them. He raised a suppressed pistol. Miller pulled Sarah behind cover. Shot fired, metal sparked, Sarah rolled, came up kneeling, firing twice. Davidson ducked, vanished behind shelves. Operator footsteps fast and controlled, closing. Sarah hissed, hostages moved to corner, Miller flank. But before movement could begin, boom. Door blew inward, smoke, flashlights. Tangsdale's team stormed inside, precise and lethal. Davidson slipped deeper, vanishing through maintenance hatch. Go, Tangsdale commanded. We chase later, secure assets now. Sarah's breath shook, not from fear, from the weight of a truth that no longer hid. She wasn't in a mission anymore. She was in a legacy war. Tangsdale grabbed her shoulder. Look at me. Sarah met her eyes, raw, unguarded. You found what your grandfather wanted someone worthy to see, the colonel whispered. Now you carry it. That felt like both blessing and sentence. Sirens shifted tone, a deeper alarm. Self-destruct or purge protocol. Facility would be erased, evidence with it. We're burning this place, Miller said, reading system alerts. Good or tragic? Sarah wasn't sure. Truth deserved daylight, but sometimes survival demanded fire. Extract, she ordered, voice steady again, spine claimed by purpose. They moved fast, hostages lifted, gear hauled, alarms blaring louder. At stair exit, concussive blast shook walls, self-detonation sequence. Tangsdale shoved Sarah forward. Go, we cover. No, Sarah grabbed her. We come out together. No time for speeches, Tangsdale snapped. Lead, that's your duty now. Duty. The word fit like iron in her chest. They sprinted, guns ready, lungs burning. The world roared, collapse above. Explosive charges detonated systematically behind them. Smoke chased like hunger. At ground level, breach team cut last lock. Bright night air rushed in. Chopper engines whirred. Soldiers dragged hostages aboard. Sarah paused, looking back one last time as flames licked inside and steel folded inward. The files. The photos. The truth. Burning and surviving in equal measure. Miller grabbed her vest. We go. She boarded, door slammed, chopper lifted. Heat below. Wind above. Heart in throat. As they ascended, fire swallowed the compound. Secrets turning to ash. Memory turning to fuel. Miller looked at her, eyes saying what words couldn't. We just stepped into a war no one sees. Sarah pressed hand to patch. Warm tear slid down her cheek before wind dried it. For the first time since she inherited this burden, she whispered, not in doubt, but in promise. I won't let your legacy burn with you, not this time. Night swallowed them, and somewhere inside it, a new reckoning sharpened its blade. What did survival mean if the world never knew you almost did? The helicopter blades cut through dawn like tired wings dragging the night behind them. The sky glowed weak gold, the kind that came before soldiers sat with their grief and coffee came too late. Sarah sat near the open ramp, wind scraping tears she hadn't admitted were there. Below, trees stretched endless, mountains like sleeping giants holding secrets under their ribs. Behind her, silence. Not peaceful silence. The kind that followed violence, thick, aching, sacred. Miller leaned against the bulkhead, breathing slow like his lungs were learning rhythm again. Tangsdale sat across, eyes closed, fingers interlaced loosely, prayer or exhaustion, maybe both. The rescued operative lay wrapped in blankets, face pale but alive. Alive. A word that tasted strange when spoken inside missions like this. Alive wasn't victory, it was responsibility multiplied. Sarah's gear felt heavier now, rifle across her lap, helmet in her hands, patch on her shoulder, not badge, not symbol. Burden, promise, spine. She had seen her grandfather's war in a locked corridor underground. She had watched the enemy speak with truth in his eyes. She had held archives of shadows and then watched fire swallow them like hungry absolution. Legacy was not heroic. Legacy was brutal. It came with loss carved into every victory. A voice crackled in headset, landing in 90 seconds. Her team readied, automatic, precise. But something was different in the air. They were carrying more than bodies this time. Truth weighed heavier than wounded. They touched down inside secure hangar, doors sealed. No cheering, no applause, no band, no ceremony. Just the echo of boots on steel and the smell of jet fuel and damp earth. Sarah helped guide the rescued woman down, steadying her steps. "Thank you," the woman whispered, voice raw with sincerity and something deeper, apology maybe. "You weren't supposed to see what you saw." Sarah didn't answer, not because she didn't have words, but because some truths needed quiet to survive. General Hayes met them with eyes that already knew too much. He didn't rush, didn't ask. He just watched Sarah like a man measuring the weight now hanging from her shoulders. "How bad?" he asked finally. Sarah removed helmet, hair falling loose, face streaked with grime and something unspoken. "They torched evidence," she said softly. "We torched what was left." Hayes exhaled, slow, old, burdened. "Davidson." "Escaped." Hayes' jaw clenched, not anger, regret. The kind that lived in old bones and old loyalties and older mistakes. "We'll hunt him," he murmured. "We have to do more than hunt him," Sarah replied. "We have to understand him." He met her eyes. Understanding the enemy is dangerous. It changes you. So does ignorance. A beat. Wind hummed somewhere above. A wrench dropped in distance. Base life, indifferent to legacies battling under its skin. Hayes softened just enough for humanity. "You're your grandfather's blood." "No," Sarah said quietly. "I'm his consequence." Tangsdell placed a steady hand on Sarah's arm, guiding her toward the exit, toward debrief, toward after. "We'll regroup. Rest. You did what few could." Rest. A word like myth. Sarah nodded, but her body didn't move at first, because something inside her wasn't ready to step away yet, not from battlefield, not from truth, not from weight she hadn't finished learning how to carry. She turned to look at her team, bruised, exhausted, silent but standing. Not one pair of eyes lowered, not one soul wavered. They didn't need applause. They needed belief. And they had hers. Hours blurred. Debrief rooms. Medical checks. Equipment turned in. Reports that would go unread in public history. Sarah showered, steam rising off her skin like ghosts leaving a battlefield. She stared at tiled wall, water drowning muffled breaths. No cuts, no fractures, but she felt cracked in places medicine didn't reach. Toweling off, she caught her reflection. Bruised cheek, raw eyes, strange expression, not pride, not grief, not fear. Recognition. This was who she was now. Not chosen. Forged. She dressed in clean fatigues, hair damp, walking barefoot into secure dorm hall, footsteps soft, echo quiet. She should have slept. She didn't. Sleep would come when her mind let go, and her mind wasn't ready yet. She found herself outside an observation window looking down at training floor. Empty now, but she could still hear echoes, shots fired at paper targets, boots hitting mats, breath measured in precision, voices calling drills. The place looked ordinary in stillness. innocent even. But she knew what had been born here. Miller approached quietly behind her, holding 2 paper cups. "Coffee," he said, handing one to her. She took it, warmed fingers around it like a small mercy. "Thanks." "You okay?" "Define okay." He huffed a tired laugh. "Alive." She considered. Alive doesn't always mean okay. "No," he agreed, "but it means you still get to choose what you become after." She looked at him, really looked. He wasn't just a soldier in her orbit. He was loyalty given freely, a steady hand when her hands shook, not follower, equal. Relentless wasn't hierarchy, it was backbone shared. He sipped coffee, studied her quietly. "I saw you in that archive room." "You were there." "I was," he hesitated. "You didn't break." She stared at the dark training floor. "I wanted to." "That's why you didn't." He said it so simply she felt tears threaten again, unwelcome and yet earned. "Tomorrow," she asked. "We rebuild, replace what burned, plan, prepare." "And Davidson?" "We'll find him. The world's not as big as it thinks. Unless you're hiding inside truth." "Then we dig deeper." He nudged her shoulder gently. "That's what badgers do, right?" She swallowed, a laugh trying to break through grief. "Yeah, we dig." "And we don't hide," he finished softly. Something in that line, the old code, the old oath, settled her heart like a compass needle finding true north after storm. She whispered it back, "We don't hide." They stood in silence, sipping coffee, watching an empty floor filled with purpose invisible to anyone outside these walls. Later, when night fell again, Sarah sat alone in briefing room, lights dim, only one lamp on. She pulled the weathered envelope from her pocket, her grandfather's handwriting soft at the edges from being held too often. She unfolded the last page she hadn't read yet. "Legacy isn't for the world to praise. It's for the right few to continue. If you are reading this, you already chose. I am proud of you, not because you followed me, but because you became who I hoped someone would be. One day they will doubt you. One day you will doubt yourself. Stand anyway. And remember, dignity doesn't argue. It endures." Her breath trembled, not weakness, release. She pressed the note to chest, closing eyes, letting a long, quiet exhale leave her bones. When she stood, she felt something shift inside, not lighter, not heavier, more defined, stronger not from armor but from understanding. She walked to exit, pausing just before door, whispering into dim. "I won't fail you, but I won't be you. I'll be me." Then she stepped out, into corridor, into future, into war she didn't invite but accepted anyway. Weeks later, a classified team stood at dawn on a hidden tarmac, boots aligned, packs ready, helicopter waiting, ocean wind sweeping across camouflage like steady breath. Sarah stepped forward, calm, sure, whole in a way pain and purpose had sculpted. "Mission?" Miller asked. "Not mission," she corrected, "beginning." He smiled, tired, loyal, unbreakable, relentless. She nodded once, relentless. They boarded as light broke over horizon. No anthem, no cameras, just resolve. The world wouldn't know their names, or their battles, or their sacrifices, but lives would stay safe without knowing why. Nations would sleep not realizing danger, past them quietly in hallways they'd never see. And somewhere a ghost finally rested. Because she didn't ask history for permission. She answered its call. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She didn't need praise or recognition. She simply acted. And somewhere in the wind, like thread unspooling from memory, a final truth whispered through her. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And she did. She always would. Relentlessly.